Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. I do want to say before I get into the reviews though, I'm surprised at how many people didn't get the reference I made in last week's countdown about the obscure Royal Rumble entrance when I referred to Karma/Awesome Kong as the future welfare queen. Folks, it was a reference to her role on Glow on Netflix. I thought we all did our homework and watched that show. Come on people. Raw opens up with some Brocky Brock time. Paul Heyman does what Paul Heyman does best. Does a great job in his promo putting over Finn Balor before turning things back towards glorifying Brock Lesnar. Vince McMahon interrupts and then asks Paul Heyman if he's familiar with the story of David and Goliath, to which Heyman replies, "I've never read the Bible." And so then Vince does a weird retelling of the story where in his version, David got beat up and then got reincarnated as Finn Balor. Okie dokie. He heals on Oklahoma City for a bit before Braun Strowman comes out. He says he's going to wait for Lesnar if Lesnar retains at the Rumble. Finn Balor comes out and says he believes. Then Braun says, "You better win on Sunday." And then Finn says, "You better stay out of my business, Balor Club." So Vince makes a modern day David versus Goliath match on the spot. Finn versus Braun. Finn looking very scrappy here. He's having Braun on the ropes several times in this matchup. One point, Braun throws Finn to the outside, and Lesnar, who's outside, catches him, throws him in a suplex. The referee sees all this and does nothing, which confuses the hell out of me. The match keeps going on, but Finn, like every other move Finn does from this point on, is like he's getting his shine on Lesnar, and Lesnar's getting hurt in some way from all these things Finn is doing. Finn's about to put Braun away, but Brock gets in the ring, hits Finn with the F5, and the match finally ends in a disqualification. So suplexes are okie doke, but F5s those are a no-no. You don't do that. So, you know, this match was good. I think it made Finn look very strong, even in getting beat up by Brock at the end. It makes me wonder, though, I wonder if this is the most we're going to see Finn get on Lesnar, like what we saw on Monday. Like I said last week when Finn became number one contender, you know, the match on Sunday either could be a match that's as exciting as the ones Lesnar's had with Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, or it could just be a squash match. You know, I'm afraid it could be almost in the squash territory after what we saw Finn do against Lesnar here. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Either way, I think Finn looks very good on Monday night. Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush come out to celebrate the big Intercontinental title win from last week, and Lashley celebrates with some poses. Apollo Crews interrupts. He wants to fight, but Bobby, he wants to pose. So they have a pose off between the two of them. Now Lashley objectively has the better physique, but Apollo has the crowd on his side with his bright smile and his flashy dance moves. Bobby jumps him, he beats him up off the podium, and I guess we just end up having a match now. So we have the match after all. Kind of a scary moment in the middle of the match when Apollo has Bobby up in a military press, and like, I don't know if his back gives out or something. He drops Bobby kind of prematurely. It's kind of a sloppy landing. Apollo's holding his back in pain. He just gets up after the referee checks on him, and he just does the spot again, a little bit cleaner that time. So I don't know what was going on there. Lio Rush gets involved. Apollo puts him over his head, which I imagine is a lot easier, but he eats a spear from Lashley, and Bobby wins the match. As he's celebrating, Seth Rollins comes out for his match. They have a stare down, and then we got Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre. Before the match actually happens, though, Seth cuts this really passionate promo. They're trying to put him over as like a man of the people to talk about how passionate he is about wrestling. Drew McIntyre interrupts to cut his own promo where he says he's going to win the Rumble match, and then they go to commercial again, which I'm like, wait, we just came back from a commercial to have these promos. What happened? Anyway, the match itself, I thought it was an awesome match. Seth wins with a surprise roll-up. We get our first backstage segment almost 90 minutes into the show, and this is Vince McMahon talking to the Revival backstage. The Revival want another tag team championship match with an unbiased, competent referee. Kurt Hawkins walks into the scene, and Vince assigns him as the referee there. I never thought in a million years I'd see a scene where Vince McMahon interacts with the Revival and Kurt Hawkins at once. Six-man tag match as the Lucha House Party take on Jinder Mahal and the Singh brothers in those awesome tights of theirs. It's a pretty short and sweet match. Grand Metalik wins for his team with a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker on Sunil, and that was it. Like, did Samir miss his cue to break up the pin? Because that seemed like a really premature ending. I don't know what was going on with that, but that was kind of a weird finish to the match. Backstage, EC3 is posing in front of the mirror again while Dana Brooke asks him about his diet, and he doesn't say anything as Elias walks by. Why have they turned EC3 into a mute? We then go to the ring where Elias is playing his guitar. He gets interrupted by Baron Corbin once again, and they have themselves a match. Once again, like Michael Cole mentions on commentary, this is a rivalry that's been going on for months. I'm like, yeah, but I feel like no forward progress has been made at all with this rivalry. Like the match they're having now is the same one they were having what felt like 5 weeks ago. What gives? Anyway, Baron Corbin wins clean with the end of days, and like I know he hit Elias with like the throat thrust before, so that could kind of be seen as a kind of a dirty move. But hey, he basically just caned him, and we all like when Kane caned people, so I don't see anyone complaining about that. Up next, a moment of bliss. Now, over the weekend, WWE's Twitter account said they were going to announce the participants in the Women's Royal Rumble match, and people got all up in arms about the announcement because the way they phrased it, it made it sound they were going to reveal everyone, all 30 participants in it, but ultimately they just announced the 23 women on the main roster who aren't in championship matches, so pretty much no one you didn't expect to see, and ultimately it's kind of much ado about nothing. You know, maybe you could see it as kind of a bait and switch, but on the other hand, it ended up just being a lot of fans getting super upset over something that ultimately was for nothing. Alexa reiterates who's going to be in the match, and then she introduces her guest, Nia Jax, and before Nia can say 2 words, Ember Moon interrupts. I love Nia's facial expression when she gets cut off. That was pretty funny. Ember says some words that she's going to win. Alicia Fox comes out and does the same thing. I can't believe she cuts entire promos in that voice. Mickie James comes out. The rest of the women come out, and basically they're about to fight, and Alexa Bliss is kind of like trying to play peacekeeper, telling them to stop fighting. She says this one random line that if you guys fight, it makes you all look like you're catty and you don't support each other. I'm like, what the fuck? It's like, it's wrestling. It's a competition. You know, it's like the whole idea that, again, I bring this back to the whole idea, thing with, earlier last year when Bayley and Sasha were having tension because, oh my God, everyone's got to be friends. No, they don't. It's wrestling. It's a competition. You're fighting to be the best. Why would you say something like that? Anyway, the women brawl anyway, and they fight their way off stage and through a suspiciously empty-looking gorilla position. Alexa Bliss then announces she's coming back to in-ring competition to wrestle at the Rumble, which I think is great. I think it was unfortunate that she was out of the ring for as long as she was with injury. It'll be nice to see her back wrestling again instead of just doing all this backstage ringside stuff she's been doing for the last few months. But as soon as she announces that, Lacey Evans comes out and she disses on Alexa Bliss. And so I'm like, wait a minute. It just by, the relation between Lacey and Alexa, are they now painting Alexa as a babyface? Like, I don't think she'd be a good babyface at all. Like, I have yet to see anything that proves that theory to be true. Maybe it was just for the context of that particular scene, but maybe it's something long-term. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff going on in this segment where like a lot of moving parts and a lot of like overlapping stuff going on. And all I could think of was when I saw this segment was, is there anyone in the women's division right now across either show who's had more creative changes in her character just in the last like few months than Alexa Bliss? Because first like, she was wrestling and then she was going to wrestle Trish Stratus at Evolution. Then she got hurt and she was relegated to doing just like ringside stuff and announce desk stuff. And then she was an authority figure for all of a week. And then they gave her a talk show, and now she's coming back to wrestle, and she could be a babyface. What's going on? Also, the addition of Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross, and Lacey Evans, that makes 26 entries confirmed for the match now by my count, and that means there's 4 spots left for Legends or NXT call-ups, some kind of surprises. We'll see what happens on Sunday. Up next, Heavy Machinery make their in-ring debut on Raw against the Ascension. Tucker and Otis do a random Bushwhackers tribute in the match. Like, look, I know these guys are going to be kind of a comedy team from now on, but Jesus, you got to make it so blunt. Anyway, the Ascension win decisively. Silly or not, these guys killed their debut match. The crowd was into it. They made it look good. I think they pretty much did all they could ask for. Raw Tag Title match up next as Ruble defend against the Revival with special guest referee Kurt Hawkins. Seems to be the go-to thing for jobbers these days is to be relegated to refereeing. Hawkins is an eagle-eye ref, by the way. He catches the Revival cheating a couple times. He essentially helps Ruble win and retain the championships. Then afterwards, the best part about this is Hawkins invokes a replay, which I've never seen done before, at least in this kind of way, where he's like, look at the footage, and then they show the replay. That was so weird. How often does that happen? The Revival beat up Hawkins. Zack Ryder makes a save, and oh my God, the Major Brothers have reunited. The Edgeheads are finally back together, and hey, Zack Ryder's on TV for the first time in forever. I'm happy for them. We had a pre-match promo from Ronda Rousey. At one point she says, I don't know what Sasha Banks wants me to do. Cut off my hair and wash her feet with it? I've never heard that phrase before. That was really something. She talks about the difference between being a boss and being a champion. It's an interesting promo. I couldn't tell if she was being unscripted or over-scripted. Like, it could have been 50-50 odds either way. We then go to the main event of Ronda Rousey and Natalya versus Sasha Banks and Bayley. Sasha has some words to say before the match as well, and, again, based on Sasha's promo, I can't tell if she's a face or if she's a heel. If Sasha's a face or a heel, I don't know what we're supposed to believe from the promos we're seeing these women do, because neither of them are really showing 100% babyface qualities. That being said, it's a really good match. I think it's a huge step up from last week's tag match with Ronda and Natalya versus Nia Jax and Tamina. This one had way better quality. It ends with Sasha making Natalya tap to the bank statement. We had a big old stare down between Sasha and Ronda as we fade to black. SmackDown opens up with some Becky Beck time. Becky Lynch cuts a promo where she says that she should be in the main event of WrestleMania. And that, the fact that she said it, they wouldn't let her say that line if they weren't planning on doing it. They make it very obvious at times. Asuka comes out to interrupt, and for a second I had to check my listings to make sure I was watching this week's edition of SmackDown, because it felt very similar to last week's SmackDown opening. Before they can do anything though, Charlotte interrupts, she talks some trash, Asuka jumps Becky from behind, they have a scuffle, the two of them. Becky stands tall at ringside, but the fight spills and carries on into the backstage area after commercial breaks. Big tear apart brawl and everything. So, the opening segment started out pretty similar to last week's in a lot of respects, but it ended in chaotic fashion, which was nice. And hey, Charlotte was there too. We finally get a match between Naomi and Mandy Rose after weeks of torment on the part of Mandy towards Naomi. Naomi looked kind of sloppy in this match as I was watching it. There's just times when she almost felt like afraid to connect with the moves, or she didn't want to hurt Mandy or something, especially a lot during the commercial break, during the picture-in-picture portion. I noticed that a fair amount as well. Sonya cost Naomi the match after a distraction. Mandy wins. I bet you anything this feud is not over quite yet. After a Rey Mysterio promo, we get The Miz versus Cesaro. I don't know how to feel about babyface Miz anymore. After all the years we've seen him as this chicken shit heel, it just for him to be a babyface now with Shane. I know they've built it for a lot of weeks leading up to this point. It just still feels so weird now to see him in the ring as a babyface. Like, the crowd's into it, at least they buy into it. So at least it works on that level. But for me, man, old habits die hard. Anyway, it's a decent enough match. Cesaro wins after interference by Sheamus. Sounds awfully familiar to what we just saw. Shane wants to do the elbow drop gimmick to Cesaro on the announce table, but Sheamus cuts him off. They beat him up. They beat The Miz up, powerbombing Shane onto Miz through the announce table. So the bar looks strong here going against this new but exciting tag team. We get a really good pre-tape promo by Mustafa Ali before we go to a face-to-face between the new Daniel Bryan and the real AJ Styles. Ooh, the superlatives. And the old Vincent Man, by the way, is the moderator for this face-to-face segment. Daniel refers to himself not as the people's champion, but the planet's champion. He also takes a shot at Vince and baby boomers in general for ruining the planet. I'm like, wait a minute. Are we sure Daniel's the heel in this situation? It all leads to a scuffle between AJ and Daniel. Daniel uses Vince as a human shield, and in the distraction, he hits the knee on AJ and walks away from the scuffle. So another kind of fight, another little fracas between the champion and the challenger. Like, third week in a row this has happened. I really want to see something new. Vince, except for being the target of Daniel's ire and him taking a shot at baby boomers, didn't really add much this segment. Backstage, Carmella and Charlotte have some words. Then we finally get the match we were supposed to get last week between Mustafa Ali and Samoa Joe. Ali looks good here. He's got Joe on the ropes a couple times, putting his flip-de-doos to good use, you might say. But ultimately, he is caught by Joe in the clutch and taps out. So Samoa Joe wins in emphatic fashion here. Backstage, the New Day are being asked if they can coexist in the Rumble match this year, and they are tired of hearing that question every single year. And Xavier goes, "What's next? Is Tony Chimel going to ask this question?" Then Tony Chimel pops in there to ask the question, and then they shoo him away, and Big E goes, "Do you see Edge here? He's not here." And so that was great stuff. This whole backstage bit with the New Day was just awesome and really one of the highlights of the show. In our main event, it's a 2 out of 3 falls match as Rey Mysterio takes on Andrade. It still takes some getting used to just call him Andrade. Zelina Vega is barred from ringside after her interference last week. It's kind of a pity they're burning through this rivalry so quickly. I think it could really be something special if they waited until WrestleMania. That's not to say they won't have a match at Mania, but it would feel more special if they waited until then, if they space it out a little more. Anyway, this is a fantastic match. Andrade wins the first fall with a top rope sit-out powerbomb, holy shit, and Mysterio wins the second fall with a Canadian Destroyer. Just great stuff between these guys. guys, especially Rey. And I know I'm far from the first person to say it, but it does bear repeating that Rey Mysterio at the age of 44 is still doing some amazing stuff. And, you know, it's really a sight to behold at his longevity, considering all the stuff he's put his body through. Unfortunately, this match does not get a clean finish as Samoa Joe comes in and beats both of them up. Since Rey was the first one beat up by Joe, I'm guessing he wins the third fall by disqualification, but it's still pretty disappointing. Joe cuts a promo, but then he eats an RKO out of nowhere by Randy Orton, and I don't think we've seen him in several weeks, so good to see him back. And Zane, it's disappointing the match ended how it did, but I think they did a really good job doing all they possibly could to build up the strongest guys on SmackDown winning. I don't think a SmackDown guy is going to win the Rumble match, but there you go. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And this week, I got to give it to Raw once again, second week in a row. Overall, I think Raw did take a step back from last week's episode, which I loved last week's, by the way. I think it lost a lot of that kinetic energy I enjoyed so much from last week. All the bustling, vibrant backstage stuff we saw was almost non-existent this time around, but it was still, I think, overall a stronger show than SmackDown. On Raw, I enjoyed the opening segment with Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar and the match between Finn and Braun. And also, the one thing that irked me was the fact that, Lesnar suplexed Finn on the outside and nothing happened with the DQ or anything. Seth and Drew had a great match. Hawkins and Ryder reuniting, and it felt so good. And the women's tag team match in the main event was a great way to end the show. One thing I just didn't like about Raw was Elias and Corbin for the 100th time. I was kind of sick of that. With SmackDown, I really enjoyed the New Day's promo before the main event. And again, the main event was great except for the finish. But yeah, just too much sameness going on with SmackDown for my liking. Too many similarities between the opening segments from week to week, and just too much similarity on this show. 3 out of the 4 matches on this show had dirty finishes. And, I think 1's fine on a show, 2's okay, but I wouldn't put them back to back, and I certainly wouldn't do more than that out of 4 matches. That seemed kind of ridiculous to me. With the main event, it was a fantastic match, and I get why they went with the Schmaz finish. They had a lot to accomplish in that, but I would have liked to see a conclusive ending. And one thing that I'm just wondering is, where the hell's Rusev in this? Rusev and Shinsuke? We haven't seen them on this week or last week's show, and so to me that match has been kind of like an afterthought. And again, I'm just kind of bored with the build for Daniel and AJ. I feel like we've seen that a lot with all of AJ Styles' feuds for the last year, where it's just like very same, repetitive, promo brawl. We saw that a lot 3 weeks in a row with these guys, and so I'm just kind of tired of it. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and bonus content. I'm Bryan Zane, and I'll see you next time.